Ooh, you have pictures. Oh, the tower.
Curious.
Yeah.
It's only 100 feet.
75.
75 doesn't sound too bad.
What's the hospital? Hospital 74. Oh, yeah. What is that thing? The recorder?
Mm-hmm. To back up.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay, so I am gaveled this.
Madam Chair,
Yes?
your microphone.
Oh,
Turn it on.
is it?
Yeah, you just hit it once and it'll be on. There you go.
There we go. All right. I now call to order the City of Cottonwood Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting Monday, May 15th at 6:02 p.m. My fault. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Stevens?
Here.
Commissioner Glasscock?
Here.
Commissioner Kling? Commissioner Nelson?
Here.
Commissioner Gaylord?
Here.
Vice Chair Garrison?
Present.
Chairwoman Maston?
Here. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes from the previous meetings. Today is a little bit of a special case. We have 3 sets of minutes to approve. I would like to approve them all with one vote, but that requires that there are no additions or corrections. Are there any additions or corrections?
No.
All right. If that is the case, then roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Glasscock?
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson?
Yes.
Commissioner Gaylord?
Yes.
Vice Chair Garrison?
Proof.
Chairwoman Maston?
Approved, but I just realized that I forgot to list them, which we have to do for the record. I apologize. I make a motion to approve the minutes from March 20th, 2023, March 27th, 2023, and April 17th, 2023. Can we please revote?
Madam Chair, we don't need a roll call on
Okay,
that.
thank you.
Just general like you would.
Okay.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Now we have informational reports and updates.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commission. Good evening. If I could remind everybody to please push the button on your microphone to talk. If it's red, it's not on. If it's green, it will be on. You only need to push it once and it'll stay on. Just a reminder that due to the holiday in June, our regular meeting will be pushed back 1 week to the 26th. So it may seem like it's a little bit longer between this meeting and the next meeting in June, so that would be why. Our new city manager started today. He is not with us this evening because he is at a city council meeting down in Old Town. So hopefully we'll see him here at the next meeting.
We can't hear you out here. Thank you. Public meeting, we want to hear you.
And that is all I have.
Thank you very much. It's fun to see somebody from the city get yelled at for the mics.
I'll be there. I'll do it off.
All right. We do not have any old business this evening. We do have wow, I'm really out of order. I apologize, folks. The next order is call to the public. Would anyone from the public like to address the commission on any item that's not on the agenda this evening? Yes, sir. And do you have the form? Thank you very much. Could you bring that up? Thank you very much. Wow, you're tall. All right, so please introduce yourself for the record.
My name is Don Rakehurst. I live in Cottonwood. I don't know if this is the right meeting to bring this up or not. It's about the dangerous road on 89A. 3 weeks ago, my wife had to go to the doctor's appointment. She had to cross 89A or 260. I know it's a state road. It's right by Super 8, or yeah, and where Big 5 is. There's not a crosswalk for that total of 8 to 10 blocks. She crossed. Cars are going over 35. It's really lumpy there. I know they're going to repair it. She fell, got hurt, scraped her arms and knees up. Because I have a problem now. I know this ain't the cities, because when you get to Walgreens there, from there out to Mingus, they have 3 crosswalks. I know that's the city's road. Postal stops lights by Walgreens and by Starbucks has a right arrow. I walk 3 to 5 miles a day. I walk it every day. Every day when I cross there by Starbucks and by the gas station there, I wait, I hit the button. The left turn lane turns left. The other right way. People coming this way turn right, have green arrow. I wait for the walk. Walk hits, people are coming around that corner, they don't stop. It's red. I gotta go like this. They're in the one up by Walgreens. I wish a city could put a light, a camera there. You want to have a safe city. You want to put all these big sidewalks going out to wherever, Clarkdale. That's great. But they have crosswalks there. They don't have crosswalks in the 8 or 10 block thing. It's crazy. How are people supposed to cross? All getting hit. Brought up to the police department. Well, it's not always the tourists. I'm tired of hearing the tourists. We gotta do something about that, because this is getting crazy. Until someone gets killed. I made a report on the state, and I see there's 3 or 4 pedestrian people, bike problems. I don't know what else to go to. So I appreciate it, and I hope you guys can do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, and we will write that down. That will be part of our minutes. Is there anyone else who would like to come forward for a call to the public that's not on the agenda this evening? I see one. Please bring the form up here and then introduce yourself for the record at the mic.
Well, it's my wife's form, but put my name on it.
That works. Thank you.
Jill.
Okay.
My name is Joe Marcinko, live in Cottonwood for just over 2 years. And a couple of things. Our roads are in very bad shape. We need to take some of that infrastructure money and do something with it. And I agree with the gentleman prior, the crosswalk situation. I noticed at downtown that they had redone them. But there's a lot of crosswalks that need to be restriped because you cannot see them. Same thing with the double yellow lines down the middle. You don't, when the sun is shining or it's raining, you can't see where you're at. And we lived here in 2010 and 11, and the roads have not changed in those 12 years. To be totally honest with you, it's really, it's just as rough. The dips are everywhere, and it's unacceptable. We need to spend some money on our infrastructure for the people that live here to make driving around easier. Another big thing that I have is retail. I know a few people have talked about it. And we, as a town, are losing a lot of tax money because people, if they want to spend any amount of money, they have to go to Prescott or you have to go to Flagstaff. They're getting all that sales tax money. That's not happening here. Okay, you got Walmart. Hello. I also used to work at Home Depot when I was here in 2010-11. That store did $30 million worth of business. I don't think anybody here realizes how much money there is to be spent, because everybody from Camp Verde, the whole valley came to Home Depot. $30 million, I don't know what it is today. That's a lot of tax revenue that we're missing out on. And I think we need to address that. And another quick question, the connector between 89A and Main Street, is there a schedule when that might be done? Does anybody know? Because I mean, it just seems like all they're doing is moving dirt. Nothing's happening over there. It's just dirt, 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 big trucks, etc. And the other thing too is through Main Street, through Old Town, all those big cement trucks, they have to come down there. I think there needs to be, somebody needs to look into the fact that maybe we ought to limit the size of some of the big trucks that come through there, because I don't know how they get through there, to be honest with you, with two big trucks or a truck going one way and a motorhome going the other way. I don't know how they do it. I would force them to go up 89A to the cement thing, go up that way.
Thank you very much, sir. I think that some of this discussion will happen a little bit later when we're talking about the general plan update, so the more general stuff. But other than that, I believe that the city can get back to you on the scheduling issues. So if you, let's see if there's an email here. Well, there's a phone. There's a phone number.
Yeah.
So we have a contact info.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wanted to come forward? And again, this is for items not on the agenda.
I just have a question. I don't have a form, but will there be questions after the? Sure.
There will be an opportunity for questions for the general plan update. But before the general plan update, we do have some new business that we need to take care of. We have our first agenda item this evening is DR 23-004, which is a request for design review for a 75-foot, well, we'll see, tall monopine wireless communications tower.
Thank you, Chairwoman, Commission. I'm Tina Haney for Community Development. I am presenting DR 23-004 for the Cottonwood Tower. Currently, there are two requests to consider. The first one is design review for the tower. At this point, it was originally presented as a 75-foot tall tower. The applicant has since said that it will actually be a 70-foot tall tower. I'll go into more detail later. With this design review, we want the Commission to consider the application, to consider the staff recommendation findings for an 8-foot screening fence, and consider staff recommended stipulations. The second request is recommendation and finding to City Council. We would like the Commission to consider recommendation regarding the tower height in excess of 60 feet and state the findings that support that recommendation. The project details. The property is Zone C1. The site itself is 0.8 acres approximately. The proposed project is either a 70 to 75 foot tall monopine cell tower. Depending on this height, there is an additional lightning rod. For the 70-foot tower, it's proposed to be 10 feet. And for the 75-foot tower, it's proposed to be 4 feet. The tower will be located in a 35 by 45 foot compound located on the southeast corner of the property. There is opportunity for future co-location. There are no proposed change or impacts to the existing business. And Ordinance 730 is effective May 19, 2023. This is regarding the location of the tower in proximity to the lot lines. Currently, our zoning ordinance says that no tower should be placed nearer than its reclining length to any lot line. Ordinance 730 did change that, allowing the applicant to provide structural engineering plans that show their projected fall radius and additional calculations. That's to be reviewed by the building official and the city engineer. This is the overall site plan for the property. It's on the corner of Main Street and Coconino Street. These are the existing access points to that business. The 4 existing buildings for the business. The area to the right of the site plan, that is the non-exclusive tech parking area for maintenance technicians to park when servicing the tower. This area here on the next slide will have a zoomed in version of that site plan for the tower compound. This is the tower compound area. The area in red is the location of the perimeter fencing. The green circle is the proposed fall radius. It's a 20-foot fall radius. And the red circle in the center is the base of the tower. The blue lines are the nearest lot lines. As you can see on that eastern lot line, there is some minor overlap. These are the proposed elevations. The elevation on the left was the initial proposal of 75 feet with that 4-foot lightning rod totaling 79 feet. And then the updated proposal on the right with a 70-foot tower and a 10-foot lightning rod. This is the proposal for the 8-foot tall screening fence. It will have privacy slats in place. And there are 3 renderings that were provided by the applicant. This is the first one looking south from Coconino. Looking southwest on Coconino Street. And looking southeast on Coconino Street. These images are site images of the existing site. We're looking south on North Main here. Looking north on Main. West on Cochise Street, which is directly in front of the building of the business. And this is looking east on Coconino Street. The surrounding properties to the north and to the west, to the south, and a single-family residence to the east. This is the location of the tower compound looking south. A zoomed out looking from Coconino Street. And then the view from North Main looking east. So the tower compound will be located behind that building. For the fence height, the commission can approve fence heights that are greater than what's in our zoning ordinance of 6 feet based on staff recommendation and provided required findings. The first item to consider is the compatibility of land uses. There is an existing single-family residence to the east. A screening fence is required for this. The existing block wall is approximately 5 foot, so it is not adequate for screening purposes. For environmental effects of commercial or industrial use, the fence height has no impact to environmental effects, whether it's 6 foot or approved at 8 feet. For potential nuisance created by commercial or industrial use, the applicant has stated that one of the items with the tower compound would be 8 feet 9 inches. This is where they proposed the 8-foot tall fence, and staff is recommending the 8-foot fence. These are the stipulations that are recommended for design review. Staff will read them into the record. Stipulation 1, the project shall be developed in conformance with the development plans as reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission at the May 15, 2023 meeting. Stipulation 2, the project shall conform to the Code Review Board comment letter dated December 2, 2022 and any additional code review board comments. Stipulation 3. The project shall comply with all applicable sections of the zoning ordinance, including, but not limited to, C1 property development standards, general provisions, signs, parking and loading requirements, landscaping requirements, and outdoor lighting code. Stipulation 4. The wireless tower shall be constructed as a monopine with a minimum of 3 branches per foot of tower height. Stipulation 5. A building permit application must be submitted within 24 months of design review approval. If this requirement is not met, the design review approval shall be revoked and a new code review and design review submittal will be required. The next item requiring the tower height, the Planning and Zoning Commission must make a recommendation and provide the findings to City Council regarding the tower height in excess of 60 feet. The recommended finding, as it's stated in the zoning ordinance, is the additional tower height is the least intrusive means of filling a significant gap in the wireless communications providers' coverage within the city. At this point, I will call the applicant up, Ben Sheedy, looking for State 48. I'm sorry.
You said there were state findings that we needed to hear about, and I didn't hear those.
For the tower height, the recommended finding, as it says in the zoning ordinance, is that the height is the least intrusive means of filling the significant gap. My applicant has additional slides to show this, to attempt to show that this is indeed a finding that you could make.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? No. All right, thank you. Oh, was there one?
Sure.
Yes.
Hi. Good presentation. I've had some questions about this for some time, but it's, again, I've been gone for a while. So when I left, I thought there was a conditional use permit requirement for these things. Is that not the case?
Commissioner Gaylor, staff did go through the zoning ordinance to verify that because we were under the impression that there was a conditional use permit, but after reading through it, it's not required.
I just want, has that been amended or something? I believe we have conditional use permits for 2 other cell phone towers in the city. One on the slag pile, and the other one over at the school district behind the school, the high school. I'm just curious. Maybe something changed. I know she made that comment in the code review comments as well. Somebody did. That was resolved, though.
Commissioner Gaylor, yes, I actually made that comment, and then we did review that and realized that there was no conditional use permit needed.
And so the issue of having to register a finding for the council on the building height, that's part of our action tonight.
Correct. There's 2 recommended motions.
Okay.
One is for approval of design review. The other is for findings and recommendation to the council.
What's the notification process for this kind of thing, where you don't have a tangible zoning change or a use permit, or just rendering a finding for the council? Do the neighbors know about this?
There was no notification stipulated in the zoning ordinance for this project, for a tower. I did read through that. I was concerned that there might be, and then confirmed that there was nothing required.
I guess the concern I would have is you do have a residence next door. I'd like to know that they know about it and that they're on board with the screening requirements, at a minimum.
Commissioner Gaylor, I have not spoken with that residence myself. The applicant did say that they did reach out. I can have the applicant speak more to that.
Also, the issue of co-location, what has been the process for that? Has there been any attempt to try to co-locate it somewhere else, like the slag pile, that one back there?
Yes, actually, the tower at Mingus Union High School, actually, I believe either last year or early this year, we had someone request to co-locate on that tower.
But I mean, for the purpose of this tower right here, have we tried to locate them with somewhere else that wasn't so visible? My concern is that this is a highly visible location. It's 75 feet tall. You can only build a building 50 feet tall. 75 feet is like the height of the hospital. If it was buried behind a slag pile or something, I wouldn't care. I'm just a little concerned about that, together with the notion of the notification and how kind of fuzzy that is, you know.
So when the applicant came to code review, we actually did ask them if they had other sites in mind for this project. Especially at one point, our IT was concerned due to a project that they were working on. Those concerns have since been abated.
You've gotten past that?
Yes.
That
IT,
issue, the transmission between the two facilities?
Yeah, IT
That's not going to be an interference issue?
Correct.
Okay.
And so they said that this location was one of the best options they had, was one of the better options. And so if you'd like, I can have them come up. They have additional slides, and then see if, you know, for your consideration.
Thanks, Tina. Please introduce yourself for the record.
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name's Ben Sheedy. I am a partner with State 48 Development Consulting down in the Valley, and we specialize in telecommunications development for the major carriers and tower owners like Vertical Bridge in this case. I think Christina did a great job kind of highlighting the project. I don't know if we need to go through all of these slides because there's a lot of redundant items on there. So just a couple notes I wanted to go through, and then I can take questions. First thing, obviously on these projects, you know, aside from the component of increased coverage for all of our cell phones, huge public safety component to this as well. You know, anytime we bring a new tower into an area, that's enhanced emergency responder coverage. So I think that's important to note. Regarding the heights, we did run, you know, the carrier ran studies at both heights, both below the threshold that we talked about, and then at what they call 65-foot center line, which is where we'd like to be right now. The 65-foot center line did provide coverage throughout Main Street, especially to the west from the tower location, which was very important to them. In the study, the coverage to the west along Main Street was degraded at a lower height. As Christina mentioned, the height of the tower is a little bit taller, and that's due to the nature of the design being a pine tree. It would be, if we didn't stealth it, it would be a little bit lower, but we felt that given the area, going with a pine tree would help disguise it a little bit more. Lastly, on the co-location piece, there are two existing, what we call monopines in Cottonwood. They were referenced earlier, one over at Mingus High School, the other one at the VFW. I don't know if you have seen the VFW site. It already has two carriers on it. Every time a carrier, you know, that then eliminated the need for another tower. So that's kind of the goal here. If we go too short on this one, it's not going to be an attractive candidate for a co-location for a future carrier. So it's, you know, it's important that we get this height. Otherwise, another carrier could be knocking on the door a year from now because they can't go on a lower RAD center on this one. So that's kind of the coverage aspect, but then just from a town perspective, I think it's important to understand that those other two towers are 90 feet and other carriers are going on them because they can get the height that they need. So just wanted to kind of mention that as well, and happy to take any questions.
So I have some questions, but sometimes my commissioners beat me to it. So I'm going to open the floor to them, and we'll start over here. Do you have any questions for the applicant? And Jim, do you have any questions? All right, we're going to skip Garrison. Go over here. Do you have any questions for the applicant?
Skipping Garrison again, huh? Okay.
Well, he'll get to it.
Thanks for coming tonight. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
I think the design of the tower is pertinent to that area. I'm just curious, though. I like the monopine component. I like its aesthetics. It seems to fit there. Are there any other design options for a tower of that size in that area, or is that kind of what you have?
That we felt strongly was by far the best option just due to the pine trees around it. In fact, I think there's one or two on that exact lot in addition to the area to the east. So we felt that that was a strong option here. And, you know, fortunately, there are trees here. A lot of times we do sites in the desert where there's nothing over 10 feet tall, and that presents a problem because the towns say, well, can't you do anything? And we can't put a giant pine tree in the desert because it looks worse than just steel. So yeah, we felt strongly that was the best option.
Okay, thank you. And then Christina mentioned that you had reached out to the neighbors. You've talked to them, and
There was an outreach effort. There was no response though. So we.
How did you do your outreach?
My understanding, it was via phone, and so open to any other means necessary.
Okay, typically in my experience, is they put pamphlets or flyers on the addresses or the residences around the area. I'm not sure, Mr. Ellis, if that is a requirement of the city, but that way, in that respect, at least there's some kind of documentation that you have actually notified the adjacent property owners that this is what's happening?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Nelson, no, there is no city requirement to notify on a tower. Because this is a design review project, we don't have that requirement for design review. It's for conditional use permits and rezones, platting, various things like that, but not anything for design review.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Commissioner Gaylord, any questions?
Yeah, hi. Do you have any pictures of the ground level equipment?
Not installed yet, but there is a slide. Let me take a look. On that picture, obviously it's screened, so the intent is for it not to be visible at all. Just to give you an idea, though, of what it may look like, I would say size of maybe a refrigerator would be like a typical cabinet size.
Does it make noise, buzz?
No. There would be the potential for a backup generator in each one. Now, we do bring our own power to the site, though, so the generator would turn on, of course, in the event that the power went out, and so I think we can all agree that would be a good scenario to have it still working.
So we do have a residence next door.
Right.
Is that commercially zoned, that property?
The site or the residence?
The residence.
Let me check really quick.
Looking at the site plan, it looked like it was all commercial. I can't remember.
It is zoned AR20.
So it's a residential zone. I have a little bit of experience with these things, not a lot. Quite often they don't turn out looking so much like a pine tree as they do like, I don't know, something else I've never seen before.
Sure.
They bulb out on top instead of come together in a point, and that makes them look kind of goofy or weird. I just wondered, what are they doing these days?
Sure. Fortunately, the town is very proactive. I think I saw it over there, asked for a material board, and very specific as for the amount of branches per foot, which is just the right track you want to be on. To your point, I cringe when I drive down and I see a site that's maybe 15, 20 years old, and down in the valley, and the palm trees have fallen off and they're not repaired. Yeah. Important as a community to hold us and the carriers to the standard that you're permitting from a zoning process. And so, we intend to design the tower based on what you see here and maintain it to the zoning approval standards.
The two that I'm thinking of, one is at the high school. It's actually well maintained. It's just kind of a funny shape to it. The other one is behind the slag pile. It looks terrible. I don't know if it's been maintained at all.
And I think a little bit of that, I can't speak to the maintenance of it, but I know the VFW that you're referring to is an older one, and Mingus High School is a lot newer. And my guess is perhaps maintenance, but also better technology and whatnot as far as manufacturing them.
Who would be responsible to maintaining this thing?
Vertical Bridge. Vertical Bridge is the applicant. I'm representing them. They're the largest private tower developer in the country, so they have the experience with these.
I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
All right, Vice Chair Garrison?
Yeah, could you go back to the slide that has the initial application and the modified application on the height? Because I'm I'm confused. I saw 80 foot on there. We see 75 here.
Yeah, it's a good question. I was talking with Christina on that earlier. Basically, what we're looking at is the definition of height can be, I guess, taken in different areas. There's a pole height, which in this case is going to be 70 feet. There's the top of the branches, which is 75 feet. And then there's just a thin lightning rod at the top, which would be 80 feet. The one on the left was our preliminary application. It's since changed. The one on the right is the one we're seeking approval on. And this is a little bit shorter than what you've seen over at Mingus High School and the VFW. Those are 90 feet.
So are we actually talking about a 75-foot tower or an 80-foot tower? Because I see 80.
Yeah, that's the top of the lightning rod.
But that's the height. I mean, that's part of the...
Right, the pole itself is 70, the branch is 75, then the little lightning rod, 80.
Madam Chair, Vice Chair Garrison, for clarification, the way the ordinance is stated is you were looking at the overall height of the highest physical point, so it would be the 80 feet that you take into consideration.
So the other slide I'm looking at is, it's page 33 of 48. It's the fall radius. And it appears that you've drawn a 20-foot fall radius, yet we're talking about an 80-foot structure. So there's 60 feet of this structure, which is the worst part of the structure because it doesn't look like there's any branches on the lower 20 or 30 feet of this thing, is going to actually be inside that house that's to the east of this location, if I'm seeing it correctly.
Vice Chairman Garrison, as stated in the zoning ordinance currently, it is that no tower should be located nearer than its reclining length. Since then, the applicant actually said if we can prove structurally with engineering plans that this tower will actually only have a 20-foot fall radius, would we be able to do this? This is why I actually took that text amendment to you and to the council. And again, it was approved and will actually be in effect this Friday on the 19th. And the reason we are requiring the building official and city engineer review and approval of structural engineering plans is to have them attest that the calculations have been shown that there are certain fuse points, certain engineering components that would actually make this tower fall within that 20-foot radius instead of its full reclining length.
So you're saying this is being designed specifically to break at a 20-foot from the top, which is 10-foot lightning rod and 10 foot of the tower itself. So the top 10 feet of the tower's the only part of this tower that we should ever worry about breaking and falling.
That is the burden of proof for the applicant when they're submitting building permits to show that. If it cannot be proven, then the building official and city engineer do have the right to not approve this.
Because I'll tell you, if I was the house to the east, I'd be really worried because their house is against that property line. There's no deviation there. So basically, if I understand the way the rules are written, we don't really have the right to talk about whether we do or don't want the tower in the neighborhood. All we really have the capacity to do is approve a design alteration that takes it out of this 60-foot range and puts it at the 80-foot range, right?
Vice Chair Garrison, only if the applicant can show that that is the least intrusive way of obtaining the service that they're lacking.
And so you didn't go through your slides, but I didn't see anything in there that really showed that you met that burden of proof. Is there something in your presentation that says that having that additional 20 feet is going to provide more coverage?
Yeah, the carrier, is it this one? This one here. Yeah. Here we go. Okay. So on here, you can see the areas that are circled on the map. The right would be 60, the left would be 70. I know there's a lot of technical radio frequency kind of jargon at the bottom there, but if you especially see on the top left circle, it's darker in that area, and that's a lot of the area off Main Street in town. And again, we're going from 60 to 70, so you're not going to see a dramatic difference, but there is a difference. If you look at it, you'll see a lot more white area in the circled areas on the right than you will on the left.
I apologize for interrupting, but so I'm seeing a planned 70-foot tower and a planned 60-foot tower. And is this measuring not from the top of the tower? Because the tower we're discussing is not 70 feet.
So the radio engineers at the carriers don't understand like the branches and everything else. They're looking at the center of the antenna is what they're referring to when they put this.
So when the antenna is centered and it is at 70 feet, then the tower itself is the taller tower that you're proposing today?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the location of the other one?
Those are other T-Mobile towers or cell sites in the area. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, is that Old Town?
The one on the bottom left, I'm not.
The top left there.
Oh, so what they're showing in the circled areas is the difference if this tower were to be shorter compared to if it were to be taller. So if you look at the right, if it were shorter at the 60-foot antenna level, there's a lot more white in there, and those are areas where the carrier would not get enhanced coverage. On the left, you see it's darker in those circled areas. That's because that's the difference that 10 feet will make. And that includes not just mobile coverage, but the ability to offer, residential and business coverage for fixed wireless as well. Now that, the carriers are offering internet service in addition to cell coverage.
I'm confused. Are these two different towers that are being planned?
No.
Okay.
No. So
it's comparing the height.
Yeah.
So what you're supposed to be looking at is the white. So if you look at the white on the right, there's less white in Old Town. If you consider that massive area inside that red circle, is Old Town versus this one has more lack of coverage by that 10 feet. And if you go over here to Cottonwood Ranch, in that area, you can see how it makes about a block further intrusion into those other areas. But I see a difference, but I'm not seeing a massive difference.
And again, at 10 feet, it's going to be hard to depict on a slide in a PDF, but there is definitely a difference. We ran this past the radio engineers several times, and and they were insistent on it. And I think, aside from their coverage goals, which is their own business, I think the other really important thing to consider is the co-location opportunities, because the lower we get, the less viable this becomes for another carrier, which could introduce another tower in the same area a year from now.
Well, what I was going to follow up with is there's still quite a lot of white even in the improved map, which to me says that in the future there's another tower request coming. So if there's going to be another tower request anyway, does this tower have to be this tall because it's going to eventually have to be supplemented with a secondary tower?
So impossible to say, but the one thing I hear a story from someone that worked in our industry forever ago, and they built a tower on South Mountain in Phoenix, and they thought, this was back in the 80s, and they thought, we have Phoenix covered, we're good, we're moving on to the next city. And that was one tower, and as we know, there's hundreds of them down there now. So the data needs of these phones, and like I was talking about, the new use of these towers is now home internet as well. Those demands increase year by year. I was at a conference last week for our industry, and they're seeing 40% increases every year in demands. So to answer your question, my guess is there will be more. Where, I don't know. But for now, I know they've shown that there's definitely an impact at this higher level.
Madam Chair?
Yes?
Can you just tell us in roundabout terms how much more coverage you're getting for the 10-foot tower? I mean, you're right, this is all the scale, it's hard to pick up.
Sure.
But I think if you can just give us a dimension
You know,
in terms of...
If I were to, I mean, just in like looking at it in layman's terms, I would say probably 20 to 30% better coverage at that higher area. And, you know, that could be the difference, you know, as you mentioned, there will be more towers in the future. We kind of know this, but, you know, the difference in this could put that off a year or two. I don't know. You know, it's hard to really say.
It does make sense to me. For 10 feet higher, you get more coverage. But I think the question of the panel is from that diagram, they can't ascertain what that diameter is. So 20 to 30% is significant just for 10 feet. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioners, are there any comments or additional questions for the applicant? I think, go ahead.
What can we see from the street?
I think we had the slide. Let's just go back to it. Yeah. Let's go back to the street view Christina had on here. Oh, there we go. So this really isn't quite the street. Did you have one actually from the street? Or I guess it's close enough, but this is from the driveway. Your back would be to Main Street here. And I think there's, from where this photo was taken, there's still probably another 40 or 50 feet, but the tower would be behind this building. It's a shed.
Behind that building?
Yep, the pest control shed there, yeah.
So,
their office is like just to the left here.
So I really,
building, accessory building back there.
and I apologize again for taking the floor, but I would have loved to see, because there are some renderings included in this packet, and I would have loved to see some renderings from the street, because I feel like the citizens here locally, like, obviously we're all concerned about the next door neighbor, but also everyone's going to be able to see this. And this is coming down a central corridor in the city. And so it's going to become a part of the fabric of the city, and it may be a valid part of the fabric depending on the need, but I think our job here as commissioners tonight is to establish whether or not it absolutely needs to be this high beyond a shadow of a doubt. And it's very hard to make that call without visualizations from the street. And I'm not 100% convinced about the coverage maps either. I would like to see some actual charts with numbers on them so we can get a real sense of like hard differences, because that's what we're supposed to be making our recommendation to council on. I may have jumped ahead. In my defense, the commission said they didn't have comments. Are there any other comments or questions? This is last call for the commission for the applicant.
I do.
Yes, please go ahead.
So is there a coverage map that you made that follows existing zoning? So do you have a coverage map that shows what your tower would cover at 50 feet? Because 50 would be where your tower would sit.
Yeah, so the existing zoning is 60 feet? Yeah. So the one on the right there was at a 60-foot rad center. So if we were limited to 60 total feet, total height, I mean, that would push, you know, since we have to have the lightning rod, the branches, I mean, that would push us down to, you know, 45 to 50 feet, which all but would eliminate any co-location opportunities in the future. And we would have to do a whole new set of maps because it's, you know, significantly lower than where we're at on these.
All right. Thank you very much. We are going to open the floor to the public now.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone here from the public who would like to speak on behalf or against this project? Please come forward, sir, and fill out a little form if you haven't yet. Introduce yourself for the record.
I'm Phil Trebell. I live in Clarkdale.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with the cell phone tower people to put a cell phone tower behind El Toreo Mexican restaurant in Clarkdale. And the neighborhood was quite disturbed. It was a conditional use permit, so they'd sent out notices. And afterwards, I had numerous people come up after the tower was operational, thanking me for giving them data, giving them cell phone service, where they had very, very poor service. I think maybe we're making too big of a deal about 70 or 80 feet. This tower is located several feet away from Main Street. I was trying to look on my phone on my map to say how deep that lot is and how far that tower is going to be away from Main Street. So I don't think the implications on visual obstructions or problems from Main Street are as big of an issue as we consider. I think the issue of the fall ratio or the fall radius is probably a bigger issue. I don't know how to cure that. That's a new wrinkle for me. But I think we spend too much time worried about how it's going to look from Main Street. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here from the public that would like to speak for or against this project? Please introduce yourself again for the record.
Yeah. My name is Don Reichardt. I live in Cottonwood, and I think it's ridiculous that you don't have to notify the people next door or the area. I think you have to change that code. I mean, if I lived next door, I would be upset that look, we got 10 people here from the public. How would they know this is coming up? I think it's a bad area. I think if you want to put it up, put it down in a cemetery where there's a lot of property back there. Right in the middle of the city, off of Main Street. Those towers look horrible. And without telling the people around the area so they can come in here and speak, I think shame on you. If that's the code, I believe you. You got to change that. You got to notify the people in 2-block area or whatever, because I think there'll be a lot more people in here complaining about it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else here who would like to come forward and speak? Yes, please come forward. And when you have a moment, fill out one of these guys and bring it and introduce yourself.
Suzanne Marcinko, the better half. I am standing in favor of this from the point of view that our cell service here sucks. My husband and I had to go through 3 phone services so we could get any kind of reception. So I do not think it's ugly. I do not think it's an eyesore. I am with the gentleman. I think you're making too much out of this. You guys can put up like wineries on hills. You can do the low-income housing that is kind of going to be in a stress. And you're worried about this? I don't agree. I really don't. So I applaud him, and I hope you're successful.
All right. Any further public comment on this project? All right, I don't see anyone coming forward, so I'm going to close the floor to the public. And now we're going to go through the commissioners to get their thoughts on this one last time after hearing the public input. Please go ahead.
I look at this from a utilization point of view, the cell coverage, home coverage for internet, public safety. A lot of the 911 calls have to use these radio towers, and the higher that they are gives more coverage to Camp Verde, Clarkdale, because Cottonwood does service this whole area. So I look at it from that point of view, and I am in favor of it for those reasons.
Commissioner Glasscott?
Yeah, as a business owner here and having shoddy cell service that goes in and out during important business calls, I'm all for more data and range of cell service and potential for others that might have areas lacking, so I'm all for it.
All right. Commissioner Nelson?
The 2 commissioners ahead of me, I agree with their statements. I also agree with the gentleman from Clarkdale. I think coming down Main Street, you're looking at a lot of business facades that probably could use some improvement as well. The idea when you're driving down the road is to keep your eyes on the road, eyes forward, to be safe. And I think we do need more coverage out here. I think the 10-foot height extension to give more coverage makes a lot of sense. I'd be curious, as Commissioner Garrison mentioned, as to the engineering component of it. I have some background in that, and that sheer height that you're speaking of the 20 feet, I would just default to our city staff, the engineer, building and safety, to make sure that that makes some sense, because in my mind, it really doesn't from the fall radius. That would be my only concern from the safety standpoint of the residences. And then, as Ms. Marcinko also said, I think we need to do a better job of, excuse me, I'm sorry, the gentleman with the hat, I'm sorry. We need to do a better job in the city of notifying adjacent property owners of potential developments that are going on. I'm sure you did your best to notify them and try to get some improvement, but I think it also makes some sense for the city to look better at the ordinances, to notify by somehow knocking on doors, somehow placing notices on their properties in plenty of time ahead of these meetings so they can come in and voice their opinion. Thank you.
Commissioner Gaylord?
Yeah, I guess I understand the cell service issue and have experienced that myself a time or two. But the issue of the appearance and the height, I think I'm less concerned about that, although I am concerned about the appearance of it. I think I'm more concerned about the notification issue, even though it's not specifically required, and the lack of any real setback here. It's closer to the neighbors than it is to the primary property owner. I'm not exactly sure where to go to that. Correct me if I'm wrong. You cannot do this in a residential zone?
Commissioner Gaylor, you cannot do it in an R1 zone.
You can do it, AR is okay?
You can do it in other residential zones, just not R1.
Just not the R1,
correct.
Okay. Yeah, I still think the neighbors should be involved somehow. Maybe they have been. I guess I'd like to see, you know, a summary of that or something, you know. Either they were okay with it or they weren't. That's where I'm at with it.
Vice Chair Garrison?
Pretty much said everything. I guess I'm just not seeing the work that's gone into proposing this specific site. I think there's other sites that were brought up during the discussion that may have been more if the area that they're going after is those two that are circled, there's definitely locations closer to Old Town that would have provided better coverage to Old Town than this location does, that also would not necessarily have been as visible from Main Street as this is going to be. And I agree with Mr. Terbell. You know, we argue a lot about things and how they're going to look in the future, and then after a while, people don't tend to pay attention anymore and don't see them, and it just disappears. But I can tell you, I drive by the tower at the high school almost daily, and that is the ugliest tower we have around. It looks nothing like a tree at all. It actually stands out now instead of hiding, which hopefully this would be better. We haven't even gotten into the discussion today about 80 versus 75 versus 70, so I'm not quite sure how we're going to get to that point of making a motion. But really, I guess at the end of the day, the biggest concern I have is the impact this is going to have on the neighbor that's directly to the east. Everybody else is far enough away. If this falls over on the city, it's the city's shop area that's going to get impacted. If it falls forward, it has quite a ways to go before it hits, Con Pest Control's building, and it probably won't hit Coconino Street, but it definitely will impact the house to the east. So that's my biggest concern. I don't know that at the end of the day, whether it's 60 feet, 70 feet, or 80 feet, it's really going to make too much of a difference there. So I guess that's about it.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. So I want to clarify that I am not anti-cell tower in general, or even necessarily tall structures. However, I strongly feel that it's our role as a commission to make sure that beyond a shadow of a doubt, this is a necessary structure in order to make that recommendation to council. And I am a little hesitant, at least personally, to do so. I don't know that that's been proven with the different heights. I know that there's value in that extra 10 feet. Like, I think that you have shown that. And I'm not necessarily as worried about the appearance, although I do think it matters. But I am worried about setting a precedent. And I would also like, I think my fellow commissioners make a really good point about alerting the immediate next door neighbor. I realize that that's not part of our process, and that's something we maybe need to work on the civic side, but also I'm very surprised to not see that person here. So I would like to make a suggestion to my fellow commissioners, which would be to table this for the next meeting, and then that would give an additional month to alert that next door neighbor and get their input on this project, and also to maybe see some final drawings at the height that would fall under, like where you wouldn't need special approval, where you wouldn't need design approval, and then the proposed height and the precise difference in coverage between those two heights. Because we did see a difference in coverage between two heights, but neither of them was the allowed height. So that's my proposal.
The next meeting's not till the end of June.
So like a month and a half. Week.
Question?
You think I know what time it is?
Question, Chairman?
Yes.
It sounds like the city staff has done their job in reviewing per the current city ordinances, correct, Mr. Ellis?
Yes.
So unless we change the ordinance, they've followed what they were supposed to do, correct?
The city staff did, yes.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Another option that I can think of would be to add a stipulation for the applicant to receive a written approval from that neighbor, which is something that we could add.
Madam Chair, I don't know that that
Oh, is that not legal?
Not.
I've never done anything that bold, so. I'm
Yeah,
just
that's not something we can make the applicant
darts
do.
at the sun. Excellent, okay. Okay, well, it sounds like we're pretty split, so we should probably take it to a vote. So, let's see, how should we do this? Yeah, I think we will go ahead and let you do that. Please make a motion.
Motion to approve DR 23-004 to allow a 70-foot tall monopine wireless communication tower subject to the stipulations that were read into the record by staff.
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Glasscock?
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson?
Yes.
Commissioner Gaylord?
No.
Vice Chair Garrison?
No.
Chairwoman Maston?
Chairperson? I love it. I just don't feel good about this one. No. All right. And there is another motion that needs to be made regarding the recommended height. We still have to do that.
No, we don't.
We don't?
Yeah, it's a failed.
No.
Are we all good?
Yep.
We're all good?
Yeah, we do have to make a recommendation to council. That was
Yep.
the design review vote.
Yeah, we still have to do it.
We did make a recommendation. We didn't approve it.
There should be two motions. One is for design review, one is the recommendation to council. So was that the recommendation to council or?
No, that was the design review. You did that one, right?
If the commission desires to recommend, I move for the recommended approval to the city council to allow a 70-foot tall wireless communications tower that exceeds the 60-foot permitted allowance by 10 feet at 127 North Main. The Planning and Zoning Commission finds that the tower height is the least intrusive means of filling a significant gap in the wireless communication provider's coverage within the city.
Can we get a second?
Thank you.
Second.
All right.
I have a question.
Yes, sir?
If they move to, or if we pass a recommendation to the city council to approve this, does there need to be, and I forgot to ask this question from staff, in the code review minutes, there was a issue about the height and the airport. Do they need a 7460 for this thing? It was, they brought it up in the code review minutes, and I just wondered about that. Is that something we need to stipulate, you know, if we're going to recommend the full height?
Commissioner Gaylor, I will have to go back and look at that. It's not something that would have to be stipulated, but if it is required from the airport manager, we still have them do it.
It just has to happen before a building permit.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right. So did the motion get read into the record? I got a little lost. Okay, so we can still go ahead and vote. We got a second? So let's do a roll call vote for the recommending approval for the tower height in excess of 60 feet to council.
Commissioner Stevens.
Yes.
Commissioner Glasscott.
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson.
Yes.
Commissioner Gaylor.
No.
Vice Chair Garrison.
No.
Chairwoman Maston.
No. Motion does not pass. I apologize. I really appreciate that all of the work that you put into this today. I just did not feel it beyond a shadow of a doubt. We do invite you to resubmit and go through the process again. We'll look at it a second time.
Does it go to council regardless?
Yes.
Yes, because it is a recommendation.
Mm-hmm. All right. The next agenda item is the general plan update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Gary Davis with Community Development, and this is a follow-up to the meetings we've been having. We started with the Planning Commission in February 27th. We had our first visioning and values meeting, and this meeting and the meeting on Saturday the 20th is kind of the last meeting in that process, early in the process, setting the basic principles, setting the basic values that are in the general plan that will affect the more specific goals and objectives that'll be written later. But as for right now, we're just kind of looking at the big picture for the vision and values for the plan. So for tonight, we'll go over the public participation process we've had so far since that point. Look at the comments that we've gotten on the survey and that we've gotten at these meetings that we've had over the last couple of months. And then also go over our draft values statements that would go with each of the 5 elements of the general plan. These are going to be, as the name implies, very drafty, certainly open to comment, wordsmithing, anything that we want to do at this point, with both comments from the public tonight as well as next Saturday, and any comments that the Planning Commission may have on those draft value statements as well. Just to give you a rundown of our public participation process so far, we've had an email notification list. We've probably got about 200 names on that list, citizens that have expressed interest in being on that mailing list. And by the way, if there are any citizens here tonight that want to be on that mailing list, we have a green and white sheet over here that you can sign up, put your email address on there, and we can put you on the list to get notified for any future meetings from here until it finally goes to the council and the voters for approval. You would get notifications on all the steps in the process. We've had a number of meetings. As I mentioned, we had the beginning of this process, February 27th Planning Commission meeting, and throughout March and into April, we had a series of public meetings on the vision and values, and we even focused on specific topics as we went forward, gave people presentations and got comments from people, and took them down on the flip sheet that Tina's working on right now. She's incorporating the comments that we've gotten so far earlier in the night, for example. So we'll just fold these into the comments that we've been getting. We've been coordinating with boards and commissions for the city, talked to the Youth Advisory Commission, made them aware of it, talked to the Airport Commission. We'll be talking to the Historic Preservation Commission pretty soon. And we're also meeting with stakeholders, other jurisdictions, state parks, town of Clarkdale, school districts, anybody that has an interest potentially in what we're putting in our general plan. And again, this isn't the last input opportunity for the public or for stakeholders. This is just the early stages where we're just looking at the general principles of the general plan. As we get more details, we'll certainly get that out to stakeholders and the public as well. And of course, back to the Planning Commission. We've had tables at events. We're at Walking on Main back in November. We've been to a couple of Chamber of Commerce mixers, bike rallies, anything we can think of to bring our surveys and our maps out to people to answer their questions. And of course, the big thing is the survey. We have a survey that we put together back in November that's very general in nature, and it was designed to be very general in nature, just to get people's general thoughts on where Cottonwood is today, what they think of particular issues involving Cottonwood, and also, even more importantly, what are people's most important issues as we go forward. And also on that survey, which has been very valuable, is an open-ended comment, which people can write anything they want to on what their main issues are in Cottonwood. And we've got some good, thoughtful comments on that. We've summarized the comments that we've gotten and passed them out to you. We sent them out last week, which was as of May 9th. We updated the City Council at a work session on what we've heard so far from people. And I've updated that with the handouts I just distributed tonight and added, starting on page 24, some new comments that we've gotten. And we have gotten quite a few new comments on that. And they're very similar to what we've seen so far, and the metrics haven't changed that much. So as of right now, we've had about 420 responses, both online and written. The written responses I've folded into the online responses so we can tabulate them all up at the same time. We asked people if they've lived do they live in the city limits? A little over half do live in the city limits. Some say no, and only 6 didn't know. But that's kind of what we expected, because less than half of the people in this region actually live inside the city limits of Cottonwood. A lot of them live in the Verde Village census designated place, which is even a larger population than Cottonwood. Also, how long have you lived in the Cottonwood area? About half of these respondents have lived here for more than 10 years. And age category, about 20% are under 40, and the rest are 41 to 65 or over 65. So the results we've gotten so far are that when we ask, do you think Cottonwood today is friendly, small town, bustling, busy, etc., the highest yes answer we got was enjoyable for walking and hiking. That came in around 79%, something like that. And Easy to travel around was actually very high, which is a little surprising considering all the comments that we got that you'll see later on traffic. But most people say it's easy for them to get around. The no category got the most votes for an affordable place to live. People are saying, no, this is not affordable. Also, a lot of no comments on safe for bicycle riding. Most people, or more people said no than said yes on safe for bicycle riding. What is the most important issue to them? And a lot of people just kind of went down the list and said they're all the most important issue. So it's kind of hard to tell. We didn't limit them to their one most important issue or their top three. We're just saying, what are the most important issues to you? And this is the response we got. More people said responsibility with water use is their most important issue or among their most important issues. Good place for working people, good place for children and teens, affordability, and keeping friendly small town. Those are the big issues, as well as being easy to travel around. And so the highest response on the yeses was responsible with water use, and the no, obviously, it's not important for people, or just basically important for Cottonwood to be bustling and busy. And the reason I chose the term bustling and busy for this survey was that I looked up the definition of the word vibrant. As you know, we're inspiring a vibrant community. And I said, well, do people really want this type of vibrancy, or is there something else? And it's interesting, the responses we've got. So I took the words from the open-ended comments on the surveys and also everything we wrote on our flip charts and put them in a Word document and did a word cloud. I don't know if you've seen one of these before, but you can program it into Word and say, give me the 50 most commonly used words in this group of text, and show us by size what are the most used words. And so it kind of shows that a lot of comments on Old Town, Main Street, traffic, residential, even Sedona comes up there, and we'll see why in a minute, but Sedona's on there as well, and towards the left. But yeah, pedestrian came up big, so we'll see how they came out. You've got the full comments. All the comments that we've received are in the sheet that you've got right now. But I went through and plucked out some fairly common, fairly typical comments that we see trends emerging for what people have been saying. In the category of small town character and diversification, a lot of people said protect and maintain the small town character and quality of life. By the way, on these slides, when you see quotation marks, these are quotations right out of the surveys that people have written in the open-ended surveys. If it's not in quotations, it's a paraphrase where we put it on our flip chart during one of our meetings. So if it's not in quotes, it came up at one of our public meetings. Public meetings were not particularly well attended, which is pretty common among these early planning efforts. We had anywhere from 5 to 10 people attending most of these. The advantage of that, though, was we still got a lot of comments, and we were able to have a lot of really good conversations, which you wouldn't have in a big crowded meeting. So kind of a silver lining to that one, but we did get some good responses. Even with 425 total responses on our survey, we're not saying that this is a scientific result. This is not a statistically accurate representation of everybody living in the city of Cottonwood. For one thing, it's going outside the city of Cottonwood. We're inviting people outside the city of Cottonwood to participate as well. But it is a really good temperature take, I think, of the people who showed up, the people who went online to do our survey, took the effort to come down to our meetings. So I think it's really valid from that standpoint, from the people who really want to give input. So comments are saying, let's avoid becoming like Sedona. That's why Sedona showed up in the word cloud, one of the 50 most words, because we got a lot of comments saying we don't want to become another Sedona. We don't want to see those traffic problems. We don't want to see the housing problems where people get priced out because housing goes to tourists and second homes, things like that. Losing rural character, too much focus on wine. Want to be a true living town, not just tourist-oriented. There are a lot of comments like that, a lot of let's make sure we cater to residents rather than just to tourists. Diversify the economic portfolio, but there were also comments, keep a strong focus on tourism and wine. As far as local businesses, we got kind of a mixed bag on the local businesses versus chain stores. We got a lot of comments like, well, we want to keep our local character, we want to keep it a small town, but where's our TJ Maxx? Where's our Costco? Where's our Target? But we get mixed comments. We say no need to, we need to attract more shopping options, but some people said we don't need big box stores and restaurants. They're just a short drive away. It's important to draw stores like Aldi, Target, TJ Maxx. They don't want to drive that far to shop. But also people saying let's encourage local and family businesses rather than national chains. Housing, this was probably our #1 commented issue. Housing affordability really came to the top here. A lot of comments like we need affordable housing for struggling families, for teachers to come and stay here. We need housing that they can afford. Also, the Sedona effect, people getting pushed out of Sedona, having to come here, overcrowded by many that cannot afford to live in Sedona or have rented out their Sedona home and come over here, leaves families, retirees, young adults unable to afford housing since housing costs far exceed local wages. On Old Town, a lot of positive comments on Old Town. People say it's good to have a center to the city, and Old Town is that center. Old Town helps allow for community connection, probably because it's kind of a walking place. You have to get out of your car and walk around a lot. Also comments on extending Old Town east down Main Street towards the older section, towards the cemetery and beyond. Parking and traffic problems in Old Town got mentioned just a couple of times. We didn't see, which surprised me, we didn't see a lot of comments on parking in Old Town. Maybe 2, 3 comments. That's it. Also comment on don't overpark historic places. This might have come out of the Planning Commission meeting in February. Some of these did. Don't overpark historic areas, don't make it a big parking lot, promote walkability, consider a trolley shuttle. Also, we got a lot of comments supporting infill and walkable areas. Some people noticed that there's established services, established infrastructure, zone for higher density development in those areas where you're close to existing services, schools, fire protection. Housing in the city center already has infrastructure and can be walkable. Walkable mixed communities supported. They supported Main and Mingus. Got a couple of comments that the Main and Mingus area, the older area east of Old Town, has a potential for being a high density housing area. And also the Mingus and Willard area, kind of where we are right now, where we have the hospital, we have the school district, we have county buildings, we have a lot of employers right here, and some developable land that really has a potential for being a higher density walkable community. We already have some apartment complexes as it is. A lot of comments on traffic. Like I said, most people said, yes, I have an easy time getting around town, but we do have a lot of, I think people have specific places where they see congestion, so they say we have too much traffic, need more traffic options. Also maintenance of roads, a comment we heard tonight. A lot of roads need rebuilding, and some of those are planned, but some of those could still be stepped up a little bit. Concerns about traffic speeds and safety. Speeds should be reduced and calmed. There should be more speed restrictions and bike lanes. A lot of comments about bike lanes. saying Cottonwood is being promoted as a bike-friendly town. We do have some bike lanes, but we need more. Also, the bike lanes we have are unsafe for cyclists, rough pavement, full of debris, so bicyclists ending up riding in the motor lanes. Like to see Cottonwood have safe bicycle routes to its public schools, either through bike lanes or trails, be less car dependent, to recreate and enjoy the city's amenities. Bicycling is not safe on South Main Street where we don't have bike lanes there. And also supporting having plenty of trails for equestrians, bicyclists, and hikers. Again, being an enjoyable place to hike was our #1 response for what Cottonwood has going for it today. A lot of comments on the airport about considering the pros and cons of having an airport, objectively look at whether it makes sense to keep operating it the way it is, including the impacts on residents. Explore ways to reduce training flights. Something that came out in the meetings is that a good 80–90% of the flights going into the airport are training flights from flight students coming over the mountain from Embry-Riddle and Prescott. A lot of comments about how to either reduce that or charge for it, kind of discourage that in some ways. Also, people made the comment that there's a lot of affordable retirement housing located next to the airport or near the airport, and the city shouldn't just say, well, if you don't like it, move away, because there aren't a whole lot of choices. Virtually all of our housing stock is within the airport's rectangular flight pattern area. So if you're staying in Cottonwood, it's kind of hard to avoid that. So what we're getting on these comments is people value certain things, and sometimes those things aren't necessarily compatible with each other. Like you want big box stores, but you want the small town character. You want more housing, but you don't want more traffic. Well, so it really came out that we really need to strike a balance here between economic productivity with our emphasis on tourism that's been in the past, with keeping the small town character and the quality of life. Also, people want more diversified businesses, new businesses, more housing, providing more affordable housing, but also making sure that we do it in a way that we don't make traffic flow that much worse. We can't necessarily promise that if we do all these things, provide more housing, more businesses, that traffic is going to be reduced. It's not, but we can manage congestion. Can't necessarily eliminate congestion. We can't even reduce it in some places, but we might be able to move it around and manage it. So I think that's kind of the takeaway from that. All right, talking about the proposed structure of the general plan. You've seen this before, but just want to kind of reiterate it. The general plan, the way we're envisioning this, will have the vision and values, which we're working on now, and then the goals and objectives, the more specific policies that the city will have to follow as we regulate development. General plan's updated every 10 years. What we're also proposing, and we've got a draft of this, is the city atlas. This will contain current conditions, descriptions, maps, supporting information. A lot of this type of information is typically in a general plan. It's in our general plan now, and quite frankly, it makes it really huge and hard to work with. It's hard to, if you're going to a general plan to find out what the vision and values and the goals and objectives are, you have to wade through a lot of studies and explanations of why biking is healthy for you, things like that. We'd like to put all that in the city atlas, have the general plan concentrate on the future, but be informed by what's in the city atlas, which will be a companion document. And then once we've got the objectives in the general plan, that can go into the city's strategic plan, which is a little more year-to-year to-do list for the city, for lack of a better word. What are we going to focus on for the next year or so during this term of the council? And hopefully that way the strategic plan could be tied directly with what's been approved through the general plan process. So they have kind of a complete picture of what's been planned. What we're proposing for the elements of the general plan are 5 main areas: economic development, land use, housing, circulation, which is mostly transportation, and public services and facilities. These broad categories kind of cover everything the city does. And to support those, there would be, right now we've got 13 sections that we're looking at writing, where that's where the specific goals and objectives would be on each one of these. And because these elements are so broad, that we're looking at, for example, the residential development would be not only a part of the housing element, but would also be part of the land use element. And transportation corridors, the section on transportation corridor policy, that is not just circulation, but that also affects land use and economic development. So each one of these elements is probably going to have 4 or 5, 6 sections in them that'll overlap with other elements. And each section will apply to probably 2, 3, 4 of the individual elements. So when you're looking at land use, you're not just looking with blinders on and ignoring transportation and ignoring economic development. You're looking at the whole picture. So for the vision and value statements that we're drafting up, this one I won't take credit for. We didn't draft this up because this is right out of the 2021-23 strategic plan that the city has already written. It seemed like a pretty good general overall statement, and didn't feel the need to reinvent the wheel with this one. So it says Cottonwood strives to maintain a uniquely desirable and sustainable community. We're unique because of our people and resources, amenities, hometown atmosphere. Continue to conserve, preserve, and manage our precious resources, including the Verde River and its unique riparian habitat. We will enhance our position as the economic center of the Verde Valley, providing retail, medical, education, transportation, recreation, and tourism. City of Cottonwood provides leadership and solutions to ensure a prosperous community where diversity of people and nature thrive. That pretty much covers it as far as when you look at all of those elements. I think that is a pretty good overall vision, understanding that it's very broad, like overall visions are supposed to be. So we're proposing that or some version of that goes forward as our first vision statement. Our mission statement, well, this is right out of the plan too, and we've already got that. It's on all of our station area in our seal. Inspiring a vibrant community has been given as the mission for the city in the strategic plan, so we can put that in the general plan as well. And our challenge, and this goes back to, remember that balance slide we're talking about. So we are challenged with maintaining Cottonwood's small town character and relaxed quality of life while providing for sufficient housing and a strong economy. Again, that's pretty broad, but it kind of captures that issue we've got of, yeah, we want a small town character, but we want to be strong and vibrant too, and provide enough housing. Not just for ourselves, but for Sedona, since we are taking on a lot of their housing burden as well. So the value statement that we're proposing, and we sent this out to you, I think on Thursday afternoon. This is the same information. Under economic development element, the value should be that Cottonwood should maintain a diversified economy to provide a range of employment and shopping options, and to be resilient during economic fluctuations. So we're not just saying what, we're kind of giving a rationale. Why do we want a diversified economy? To provide a range of employment and to be resilient during economic fluctoations. That's the rationale for this. So hopefully most of these will be kind of providing their own rationale. Cottonwood's small town atmosphere is an important asset So unto itself, that is an asset that's to be valued, to be enjoyed by residents and visitors, and should be preserved and enhanced. So we're putting, mentioning residents as well as visitors here. Tourism should continue to be an important part of the economy, but Cottonwood should avoid the negative impacts of over-tourism as seen in other popular destinations. And we're not just picking on Sedona here. There's a lot of towns that we can all think of that are kind of over-touristed, that are kind of loved to death by people. I think we've gotten the message loud and clear through this process that people want to avoid that. And while national chain retailers and restaurants are welcome, Cottonwood should be especially supportive of small, locally owned businesses, which are more effective at recirculating revenue locally and help define the unique character of the community. Again, the unique character of the community is on bullet number 2. It's an important asset to be retained. And small locally owned businesses recirculate money within the community, whereas a big company that's headquartered out of town, they don't seek the kind of services through the local community that, say, a local restaurant, if they need a lawyer, they need a insurance agent, they're more likely to stay community-oriented than a national chain. So on land use element, some kind of basic stuff here, but to go through this, Cottonwood should plan for a wide variety of land uses, allowing for diverse economy and varied housing options. Location of land uses should promote a high quality of life. Incompatible types of uses should be separated, while compatible uses can be adjacent and commingled in mixed-use development. And the specific policies, the specific goals and objectives can get into the specific of what's compatible and what's not compatible. But you see compatible use as being like shops, small, light commercial, next to multifamily, single family, those types of businesses or those types of uses can commingle quite a bit more than, say, industrial uses next to residential. Doesn't work out that well usually. So that's what this one is saying. Given the finite amount of developable land available in Cottonwood, remember those slides on the developable land. We don't have a whole lot of it. We can accommodate our growth in it, but we still don't have a whole lot of it. It's finite. Development and redevelopment should take place in economically productive patterns. Infill development, again, that's where you develop where the infrastructure already is. Infill development should be supported as it typically generates less infrastructure costs and vehicle lanes traveled on arterial roadways than development on the edge of the city. And again, that's part of that congestion management. We can't make it go away, but if people have to travel fewer miles and don't have to get funneled through the 89A 260 intersection, that's part of congestion management. Old Town is central to Cottonwood's history and identity. Its unique character should be preserved and enhanced. Cottonwood's setting within its environment is an important part of its unique character. Resources such as Verde River and natural open space should be protected to make maintain Cottonwood's connection with the environment. And housing. Ample housing should be available within Cottonwood to accommodate current population and anticipated growth. New housing should include a wide range of types, sizes, and price points to accommodate the diversity of Cottonwood residents' age, income, and household size. Housing stock, both new and existing, should be safe and healthy for residents. Cottonwood's residential areas should be well maintained to maintain their visual appeal and their economic value. So in other words, neighborhood code enforcement is important. We got a lot of comments on that, saying, yeah, Cottonwood's a little rough around the edges in some places. There should be more care taken on those in these areas. And cost of development. Cities should keep development fees and review times as small as possible while ensuring that required development standards are met and appropriate public participation opportunities are provided for. So again, kind of a balance here. We don't want to charge people too much, make it too hard to go through the process, but we want to make sure that we maintain standards and that we meet all the public participation processes. Circulation. People using all modes of transportation, driving, bicycling, walking, should be able to circulate freely and safely within Cottonwood. So making the modes equal here, driving, bicycling, and walking. Cottonwood's arterial roadway corridors are the community's most used and most visible public places. So thinking of streets not just as strips of concrete to drive on, these are our public places. The intersection of 260 and 89A is the most traveled place in the city. That is our most visible and most used public space. So start thinking about those areas in terms of being public spaces. Those spaces should be designed to maximize safety, efficiency, visual appeal, and economic productivity. Roadways should be designed to prioritize the safety of pedestrians, bicyclists, and drivers over maximizing vehicular speed. Roadway design should be consistent with the context of adjacent land uses and the planned function of the roadway, keeping vehicular speeds lower where more pedestrians, bicyclists, and driveway entrances are present. So that's talking about there's parts of town where there are highways going through town. Those should be high-speed corridors. Those should be designed for high speeds. But where you've got lots of conflicts, you've got pedestrians, bicyclists, lots of driveway entrances, then that roadway design should be consistent with that context. And here's the one on traffic congestion. While occasional minor traffic congestion is expected in a vibrant, prosperous community, frequent and severe vehicular congestion diminishes the small town quality of life and should be managed to reduce delays wherever possible. Cottonwood's network of pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular routes should be interconnected to the greatest extent possible. And again, the rationale here is increased connectivity can improve circulation within the community and reduce the funneling of vehicular traffic onto arterial and collector roadways where congestion might occur. Again, think Highway 89A. Cottonwood's airport should be planned and operated to prioritize safety and to serve an important function in the community and the regional economy. On the last of the 5 elements, public services and facilities, Cottonwood must ensure that a reliable supply of safe drinking water is available for its current and future population and that wastewater is collected and treated safely and efficiently. Some of these things go without saying, but again, this is the overall broad vision statements that'll be supported later by specific goals and objectives. Existing public facilities, including city roadways, parks, and buildings, should be clean and well-maintained. Proper maintenance ensures public safety and protects the city's investment, reducing long-term maintenance and replacement costs. Cottonwood's library and park facilities should remain vital gathering places and points of pride for the community. Another batch of comments that we got, especially in the last week or so, when the Cottonwood Oak Creek School District sent out a link to our survey, and we had a lot of responses from parents and teachers with comments of there should be more things for kids to do, more places for them to go in the community. And from the city side, library and park facilities really are a great so-called third place for kids. First and second place being home and school. Where's the third place they go? Often the library, often parks. Cities should promote public health and safety and strive to minimize hazards such as fire and flooding. Cities should coordinate with the various community organizations to help maximize the quality of community services, including education and health care. We did get a lot of comments on health care. There's a lot of perception out there that the health care situation has kind of deteriorated over the last few years, and Obviously, the city doesn't run the hospitals or the doctor's offices, but there may be some ways that we can coordinate with other community organizations to help that. And finally, citizens should have ample opportunity to participate in decisions that affect the community. So those are the value statements that we've come up, kind of the guiding principles that will set the direction and set the tone for the specific policies. After that, we will talk about this again in this room on Saturday, May 20th, 10 o'clock in the morning. We like to have meetings on a weeknight and then the same meeting again on a weekend, so give people maximum attendance possibilities. So that's our next step, is to have that meeting. Once we have that meeting, get people's input on those value statements, any changes that need to be made, anything that needs to be added, then we can go forth and start writing those specific topics, those 13 or so sections that'll have the specific policies in the general plan, bring that back to the community and the commission later in the year. So is there anything, first of all, we'd like to get the public's input on it. If there's any public comment and also the commission's comment, we can go back over those, wordsmith as you will, and come up with something a little stronger.
So at this point, there would normally be an option for an initial commissioner comment, but we have some folks from the public who've been very patiently waiting behind Mr. Davis to make public comments, likely regarding this general plan. So I would like to open the floor to anyone who is here from the public that wants to comment on the general plan. We have 3 minutes per person to make comments. And typically we don't respond directly to comments because we really just want to listen. But if you have questions, I'm sure that Mr. Davis and city staff would be happy to answer. Would anyone like to go first? Please come forward. And when you get to the mic, introduce yourself for the record.
Good evening. My name's Patty Greenelch. I live in the Verde Villages. And I really appreciate this opportunity to come and speak with you. And I also want to recognize I have been coming to these meetings, and they've been very professional. You've done a great job, Gary. I appreciate it. But as I come to these meetings, and I'm kind of disappointed because I come to talk about annexation and why you're not really interested in annexing Verde Villages. We are part of your community. I wrote my little question so that I'd keep it to 3 minutes. So the answers that I've heard is that the last 2 times this was voted on, it was voted down, and that's why it's not been brought up. The last time it was voted on was in 1998. That's more than 20 years ago. I've lived here 20 years, and I've never heard it discussed at meetings or city council or anything. I mean, that's not to say it wasn't, but I think it needs to be talked about more. I was also told that it's up to the people of Verde Villages to bring this up, and that if we don't bring it to you, then it won't come up. The problem is we have no form of representation. The Verde Village Property Owners is a voluntary organization that has less than 300 and some people out of 5,000 households, so it does not represent truly, when we have no representation. So how are we to get educated about what annexation means? If you don't provide the pros and cons and let us know, we're always going to be hanging out there. So, and according to the wonderful graphs and things that were provided, the Verde Villages outnumber the residents of the city of Cottonwood. We have higher incomes. We have younger people, so we're sustainable. I don't know why you wouldn't want us to join. We also pay a separate fire tax. We pay more for our water. We pay to use this beautiful facility. We pay in our taxes of everything we buy in this town, and a portion of that comes to you, and we get no benefit from that. So I think that the people in the community surrounding the city deserve to know these pros and cons, and I think that you need to come out and do some meetings with the property owners and with the public, not just us, but all of the outlying community, to tell us the pros and cons. I will tell you, there are people who don't want to join. I know that. I talk to them all the time. But there's a lot of new people who do. And if you haven't asked in 20 years, it's time to ask, and it's time to give some information to us. So my question is, what are the next steps, and what can I do to help? Because I would really like to be a part of the city of Cottonwood that I call home. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And someone could get back to her with annexation steps. Yes, someone will follow up with you. Anyone else would like to make public comment? I don't see anyone. Oh, please come forward, introduce yourself for the record.
Good evening. My name is Andy Grosetta, and I live at 625 South Mount Mingus Road. Two things I would like to emphasize. I think the staff's done a great job of trying to pull information together, and sometimes it's discouraging because they don't get very much public input, but I was pleased to see at least there's 400 plus folks that took time to add their thoughts to the process. Two items I'd like to emphasize, and I've shared this with staff when I met with them previously, is we need to really emphasize economic growth. We need more jobs in this town. It's so sad. Commissioner Garrison's been around here. His family's another old family. It's so sad to see our kids grow up, graduate from high school, go off to college, and maybe 1 out of 500 may come back. We're fortunate in our family. We have 1 out of 3 kids that came back to work here in Cottonwood. But I don't hear enough about economic growth. It's in there, but it's not emphasized. We talk about tourism, we talk about recreation, but jobs. We need jobs created in this town, and we've talked about that in the past, but we just can't seem to get over that hurdle. So I would like to see the city make that one of their top priorities. The other issue to bring to the forefront, and we've danced around it all over the years, and that's traffic, circulation, roads, infrastructure. There's no question that when we talk about bringing more people to town, recreation, tourism industry brings dollars, but as you encourage more and more of that, you encourage more congestion. And if you bring new economic growth here, that does bring more congestion. So what are we going to do about it besides just talk about it? There was a study done about 25, 30 years ago by Yavapai County, Davin Associates, and they had come up with 2, 3 different ideas about outer loops to this town. And I think the city needs to revisit that and have those discussions with the county. I know Gary at one time, I think right before I talked to you, or you had mentioned that you were going to meet with Yavapai County. I'd be interested what those discussions were, because there's down at Main Street, Highway 89 and 260, that intersection, and it's all relative. We think it's highly congested, but if you move here from LA or San Francisco or Chicago, this is pretty minor traffic. But for us folks been around here a day or two, it's pretty tough getting around. But I would encourage the town to talk about alternatives, whether there's ideas of a shortcut across that intersection going east to Sedona, but not everybody goes to Sedona. We do draw a lot of traffic, but a shortcut across and miss that intersection to the right. The western or outer loop, and that's from Ogden Ranch Road. It circulates around the western side of town. Excuse me, I'll finish in about 25 seconds. We need to have another way around this town to get from point A to point B. As you come into Cottonwood, and if you don't want to go through 260 in this intersection down here, and you're going to go to Jerome or the train in Clarkdale, how are you going to get there? We need to make a big circle, either to the west or to the east. But traffic, circulation, and economic growth, those need to be top priorities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else who would like to come forward and speak on the record? I'm sorry, you do have to introduce yourself again.
Hi, my name is Don Reichertz. And his last thing was bringing up more community involvement. And I think one way to do it is to change that ordinance that, like tonight, about having a big tree up there and going around and telling the neighborhood what's happening. I think the ordinance should be changed, and how do we do that? I appreciate it. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Any further remarks? Please come forward, introduce yourself. Oh, you can take turns.
Sorry. Again, it's Joe Marcinko.
Mm-hmm.
As far as, what do we got? A dozen people?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How did they know that there was a meeting? Somebody, you got to figure out a way to get, everybody needs to know there's going to be a meeting. You can't do it in the newspaper because everybody doesn't get the newspaper. You can't do it by email because you don't have God knows how many email addresses. I think a mass mailing to get people involved is probably the only way. And I want to ask another quick question. Does anybody know what the population of Cottonwood is?
City staff can answer that.
I mean, you look at all the signs in this whole valley. It tells you when it was incorporated. The elevation does not tell you population. Without knowing how many people are here, it's very difficult to get more than a dozen people to come to a meeting. I'm sure people have a lot of good ideas, but if they don't know there's a meeting and that they can express themselves, you know, they're all sitting at home, you know, cocktail hour, I don't know, having dinner, watching TV. They don't know there's a meeting. And there's probably a lot of people with a lot of good ideas, but they're not getting across because they don't know there's a meeting. I mean, at my age, this is probably the first town that I've ever gone to a meeting. And I came from Southern California. You guys don't know the meaning of the word traffic. Okay. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you. And I believe there was someone else, but why don't you answer the question about the population really quickly?
12,296.
I was going to say 13,000, so I'm glad you said something.
That was the 2022 census number. And as you mentioned before, the Verde Village census designated place, which includes not just the Verde Villages, but also goes up into Bridgeport and some other areas, the Lesky Road area. That's slightly more than that. That's about 12,500, 12,600, something like that. And then Clarkdale is about 4,400, 4,500, and then Cornville's another 3,000 or so. So we're kind of we're the big city, but we're the small piece of the pie. We're the biggest minority, yeah.
Thank you very much. And there was someone else waiting to speak. Please introduce yourself for the record.
My name is Bob Rothrock. I live in Old Town on 4th Street. First of all, I've been coming to most of the meetings here. I want to congratulate Gary on a job well done. He's brought a lot of information to the table, and I wish more people had taken advantage of that. Piggybacking on Mr. Grossetta's comments, I believe that things like recreation and tourism can provide a lot of economic growth. The problem is that they are typically low-paying jobs, and the folks can't afford to live here anymore. That's going to be a tough nut to crack. However, something that can bring jobs and is broadband. If we could get broadband communications here, I don't know how tall the tower would have to be, but I'm sure we would need something. That would allow people to have good-paying jobs who already live here and contribute to our economic growth. I was interested in the fact that a lot of people say that we want to avoid being like Sedona, and that's something to dodge. How did Sedona get this way? They built a whole lot of hotels. I'm concerned that this body here approved the idea of an 80-unit hotel right at the top of 89A and Verde Heights. All those people are going to be running down Verde Heights to get to Old Town, where there's a limited amount of parking and, well, maybe a shuttle could be used. But Verde Heights is a residential street. And has a very dangerous curve right at the top of it where everybody is going to be coming around the corner to get down to Old Town. So yeah, we want to avoid being like Sedona, but we have to avoid that by taking each thing that comes to us as whether or not it's going to help us avoid Sedona. So thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Are there further comments? Really? I don't believe you. All right, last call for public comment. All right, I am now closing the floor to the public, and I'm going to get the commissioners' comments, and if anyone has any questions for staff, please go ahead. I will switch it up and start with Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As mentioned by the community, I think the City of Cottonwood staff has done a fantastic job. This is my first go around with a general plan in this community. I've been other city entities larger than this where the community and the staff probably hasn't done as good a job as you guys did. So what I've seen so far is remarkable, and you guys did a really good job. Just curious, Gary, after this meeting on May 20th, then what's the next step?
Commissioner Nelson, the next step is we will take this information, go away and write the policies, the goals and objectives based on what we've heard from the public, and then these value statements are based on what we've heard from the public. We'll take those and flesh them out into the more specific policies. Probably look at our current general plan to see if there are policies in there that we want to continue that make sense. I think one of the shortcomings of the plan is that right now there are a lot of policies in there that are kind of high level, support this, be supportive of motherhood and apple pie, without being real specific about how to get there. And we're at that high motherhood and apple pie level right now with these policies or with these value statements. This is what we value, this is what we want, and this is why we want it, this is the rationale for it. Now, how do we get it done? And how do we measure it? And take those goals and objectives, and like I say, those are what goes into how the city does its work over the next 10 years.
Thank you. And then what can we do to help you guys? What can this board do to help the staff get this very important function completed?
Tell your friends. Encourage people to come to the meetings. Certainly welcome to come to the meetings yourselves and kind of get the ball rolling with discussion too. There's nothing wrong with that. You're citizens too, so feel free to come to these meetings as we set up the next round once we get some draft to be reviewed. But yeah, get the word out. It's always a challenge to get the word out because at this level there's no exciting controversy things that gets people out. We have put notices in the newspaper. We put a couple of 8th-page ads in the newspaper for this meeting in the 20th. But I think what really helped was we put notices in the water bill. So anybody that gets a water bill, and that includes Verde Villages, this last cycle, if you got a water bill, you got a full-page announcement in English and Spanish notifying people of these meetings, and also with the little QR code on how to take the survey, and that's how we got a lot of responses. So even if we didn't get a lot of people in the seats at these meetings, we got some people said, oh, I'll take part in that, and I'll scan that code and spend 10 minutes on this survey. And I think, again, it's not a scientific opinion poll by any means, but like I say, it's a good temperature take of the people who are motivated to participate.
And thank you. And to Mr. Marcinko's comment, maybe with the water bill usage, we can maybe put a flyer in there on future meetings for planning and zoning and council. So thank you.
Commissioner Stevens?
Even though we're no longer coworkers, I've been getting a lot of feedback on what a great job you're doing. Even though I'm next door. So they said
It's okay.
Gary Davis is doing a phenomenal job.
Okay. Commissioner Gaylor?
Yeah, I haven't figured out the barcode yet.
You don't have to. You just have to wave your phone over it, and
I used my
does
pen.
something.
Yeah. I don't have too much to add. I just, I agree with everybody else. You guys are doing a great job. I know it's hard to get people to turn out. They're just busy. It's a challenge everywhere, any time zone.
Commissioner Glasscock?
Yeah, again, kudos on a great job. I mean, it does take a lot of work. I love your Atlas idea. I think that's fabulous. And coming from an area where there's about 175,000 people, this is a bigger attendance than any other meeting I've been in. So I think a lot of us can do our job, sharing what we do here, just spreading the word the best we can. You can't force them to show up. If they want to have a say, they got to show up, put their say in.
Vice Chair?
It's the same as what's been said. Kudos, you guys. This is a massive amount of work, and you have to do it every 10 years. And I'm really happy to see some of the faces in the audience and some of the participants. There's several of us here in this room that have been doing this decade after decade after decade, and that's a commitment to making our communities better and trying to continue to improve what we have. I think one of the difficult parts of a general plan, especially for a city like Cottonwood, is we're at 12,200, 12,500, whatever you want to say, population, yet we're the economic center for 30 to 35,000 people. They pay taxes into our community, but they also come in and rely on our police. They rely on our fire department. They rely on our roads. They rely on our sewer. They rely on our water systems. They rely on our ability to support commerce that offsets the ability to have housing. So, overall, I think the city does a great job of being what it can for everybody while still keeping a quality of life for the residents within the city limits of Cottonwood the best that it can. So I think, this is a really great blueprint to do that. And I think one of the things that the comments and your different layers of focus show is how necessary it is to have a strong economic development person or component to our city. And I think we can do better there. I think we can be stronger when it comes to economic development, because that was a lot of the comments that we saw in what people wrote, is they wanted more options, and we don't have the options. And the city can't go out and tell Walmart they gotta move, and you gotta bring in a Costco or a fast food chain. But we can make it more appealing to have those people and explain to them when they're looking at a dot on the map that Cottonwood isn't just 12,000 people. It's really more representative of 30, 35,000 people, which gives those businesses the idea that there's a payoff at the end of the day to bring their opportunity to our community. The one thing, I guess, out of all this that I would request, and it's the same old thing over again, is I really would like, when this is all done, to have another sit down with the city council to kind of discuss our jobs, our responsibilities when it comes to upholding the values that are set forth in the general plan. I think as you're going through your comments and your presentation, I believe that we really do keep most of that in our discussions when we have talks about what we do and what we don't like about things that are proposed to us, especially when it comes to traffic and neighborhoods that are walkable, and trying to do more infill and create higher density where it's more appropriate versus the outer, you know, having that growth spread out and having it wander out into our more open spaces. So I think overall we're doing a pretty good job, but I know you can always do better. So, you know, I would like to hear from the council maybe ways that they think we could step up what we're providing them for input and support and counsel. So with it, that's all I've got to say. Thank you very much. Great job.
So I obviously agree with my commissioner's statements. Gary, you're great, gold star. And this is so much work, and we know, and that atlas is incredible, and I keep it with me in my car, like for emergencies. Atlas emergencies, but I also
need to know the population in a pinch.
I do, so I can figure. Well, see, I had 13,000 in my mind, but that's because I was rounding. But I also wanted to say, really, it's the whole staff. Like it's a group effort, and I think that one of the things I wish more citizens would show up, and I love the water bill thing. Like I think that it would be great just to print on the back of the bill, so you're not wasting an additional sheet of paper or something. Just to get more people talking to us and talking to the staff, because it is all about striking a balance. And I think, Gary, you really landed on this. It's in the actionable items, because it's very easy to say something that sounds positive. I think you said apple pie. Mm-hmm. But it's difficult to find a way to make that actionable, because what vibrant, to use a very prescient example, means to one person isn't what it means to another. And I know that as a commission, we're all dedicated to helping this community be more vibrant, but we all have our own interpretive goggles on about what that means. And I know that economic development is also incredibly important to me and to each of us. And in my mind, what makes for economic development in relationship to the general plan is some of that mixed use, bringing Old Town east, continuing to develop walkable corridors, because that's how you split the difference between being totally dependent on large retailers like your Targets and your Costcos, and giving people more economic opportunity at a more micro level, a more attainable level for a small family business. And I think that that could be something that sets Cottonwood apart from other cities, in 10, 20 years. Being able to come here and have a really walkable old town that's big and extends and can support a lot of shopping. So that's my 2 cents on that, but mostly just, great job. I think it's great that you're getting more community feedback. Did you mention that you sent something to the schools as well?
We did one of our outreach meetings to the Cottonwood Oak Creek School District last week, and said, hey, we've got this survey. Can you get the word out on the survey? And the next day, they sent out the little QR code or something with a link by computer to all their parents, apparently, and their staff, and we got a huge surge in responses. So a lot of the new comments that you see after the 9th, starting I think page 24, that's part of this surge. So there's a lot of comments about services for youth and concerns about things along those lines.
I think that's great. One of the things I get concerned about anytime there's surveys like this, because 400 is a great number of responses, but it's still 400 out of 12,000 people.
More like 30,000, because we're going outside the city limits.
30,000.
Yeah.
So I always think, well, what segments of the population are we capturing? And because you want to get a little bit of everything.
Right.
It's very easy for 400 people to sound like there's, oh, well, this is definitely what they want. But what if that's just that minority of 400, So I think that the reaching out to schools is brilliant, because you get people who maybe wouldn't see it in the paper ever, You know, if you're chasing after an elementary school age kid, you don't have time to read the paper. There's no paper in your life.
And working enough jobs to pay your rent.
Yeah, and that, yeah. So I wonder if there's not something that we could do, like with the Chamber of Commerce, ask it to send it out to like their members and get little business owners action. All right, any other comments or questions from the commission? All right, is there anything that you'd like to add, Gary?
Just that if you look over those value statements, anything occurs to you that could be reworded, something we've missed that might be good at this high altitude level, or something thinking a little in the future, saying, hey, to carry out this value, we need to do this specific thing. Maybe we'll think of that between now and the fall, and maybe we won't. So, you know, you can forward that suggestion to us.
That's excellent. Thank you very much. All right, and I don't believe we have any discussion items this evening. So since we do not have any discussion items tonight, are there any suggested topics for future meetings? I don't see anything. Oh, yes, Commissioner Nelson?
Push the button. I noticed from some of the comments that there's more than just myself interested in that slag pile that we talked about last meeting, and I had brought that up even though I knew it wasn't an agenda item, but I was maybe anticipating some feedback from staff on that monumental pile of slag and what the vision is that we were going to do about it.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Nelson, we are working on that.
Okay, great.
We're
Thank
looking
you.
at putting that on the agenda.
Thank you. 5 backhoes and 8 train loads. We'll help look back.
All right. 2 backhoes. All right, with that said, I make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor? Aye. We're good. I get excited about tapping.